By 1990, dozens of people had gone missing from Rostov, the largest city in southern Russia. Several of the bodies, some of which had been mutilated, were found along the banks of the River Don and in the woods and fields outside the city. Police thought the killer might work on the railways and be targeting passengers. More than 3,000 officers were positioned at stations across the region. But despite the massive police presence, the killer committed 2 more murders. He slipped through the police net at Donlezko station and dragged his victims off. By now the police were desperate. The public were terrified and pressure was mounting to catch the murderer before he struck again. But in November 1990, it suddenly stopped. Police had been watching their main suspect, but needed a reason to take him into custody. Then the suspect attacked 2 young boys and the police arrested him. The man was Andrei Chikatilo, a 54-year-old railway engineer. At first he refused to confess to anything other than acts of perversion towards young children. Then psychiatrist Alexander Bukhanovsky was brought in.
When I started working with Chikatilo, I gave him the psychological profile which I had written for the investigators. I said, read it and tell me if I understood you or not.
Chikatilo broke down completely and confessed. He began to show investigators where he had disposed of the victims' remains. But he refused to say why he had eaten some of their organs. He only told Bukhanovsky he'd been on a mission.
Chikatilo explained that his killings were to make society healthier, sparing it of prostitutes, drunks and thieves.
Photographs taken of Chikatilo at the time of his arrest matched the sketches police had used to find him. When police searched Chikatilo's flat, they found 23 knives that he'd used to kill. He had been preying on the innocent for nearly 13 years, often violating and cannibalizing their body after death. Chikatilo's first victim was a 9-year-old girl, whom he'd killed in December 1978. 6 years later, another man was wrongly charged with the murder and executed. More killings followed. Many of the victims were young children whose bodies were usually found within a few days. From 1982 on, Chikatilo had been on an astonishing rampage. As he led investigators to his killing grounds, they could scarcely believe the scale of his crime. It was clear that Chikatilo was one of the worst mass murderers of all time. He was eventually brought into Rostov's main court in 1992, after 16 months in custody. There was chaos in court as relatives of the victims cried out for revenge. Chikatilo seemed confused, at first unable to answer even the simplest questions. He was charged with 53 murders. Although Chikatilo's behavior in court appeared bizarre, psychiatrists had decided that he was quite sane, even though he gave every appearance of being completely demented. He was under constant watch by Alexander Bukhanovsky. For his own safety, Chikatilo was confined to a steel cage. He told the crowded court that he had no idea why he'd killed so many people, and described himself as a mad beast, a freak of nature. At times, the evidence was so gruesome that even the guards were overcome. 6 months later, it was all over. Chikatilo, with a full head of hair, was found guilty. The judge said that Chikatilo had planned each murder with care, so his sanity was not in doubt. Chikatilo responded by screaming insults from his cage. He claimed he was a victim of Soviet oppression. In October 1992, Judge Leonid Akubzhanov sentenced Chikatilo to death. The waiting was over at last for the relatives. Chikatilo was led away to await execution. A bullet to the back of his head.